Good, good. All right, so lying down on your back, flat out to start with. So all we're doing here is just having a moment of checking in, right? So lie yourselves down, legs out straight, arms down by your sides, and you land where you land. There is no right or wrong with this. You're literally just lying on your back. Now, it won't make an awful lot of sense now, but I'm hoping that you remember enough of what it feels like that by the time we get to the end of the session, you notice whatever you notice. Maybe there's a difference in how flat you are to the mat, how relaxed, how easy it is to breathe, etc. So just bring your attention to your breath. There's no right or wrong way to breathe. There's nothing that I want you to do here other than pay attention to your breath. And just by paying attention to your breath, you will find that it maybe deepens, that it gets longer, your exhale gets longer. But like I say, no right or wrong way, just notice what you notice. It's just a moment of, if you're concentrating on your breath, it's easier for your brain to do a little bit of a scan of how your body feels so that you've got something to compare to at the end of the session. So simply lay there and breathe for one moment. Like I say, I'm not going to have you here very long. The whole idea is about movement, but breathe. And just see if you can allow your body to sink more deeply into the mat. Okay, so there ended nice, Kelly. Let's get up and get into it. So you're going to come onto your hands and knees to start with, and hoping that you can get into a position where you can be fully flexed at the knees and your feet are flat. So my backs of my feet flat to the floor. If you're kind of cramping, that's okay. And you need to come up onto your toes, that's okay too. But keep coming back down to your flat-footed position. And you're going to bring your hands. So I'm keeping my butt on my heels and I'm bringing my hands down just in front of my knees. My arms are straight. I've maybe got, I don't know, 10, 12 inches, something like that between my hands and my knees, as far as you can go while still keeping your chest nice and upright. And you're going to bring your thumbs together. So I'm just bringing my hands to the middle of the mat. Dead simple to start with. You're going to bring your right hand, you're going to place it lightly behind your head, which puts your shoulder in external rotation. Okay, so from there, you're going to bring the right elbow to the left forearm. So I'm rotating down, and then I'm leading with the elbow and rotating up towards the sky. And you just want to see, you have a look up at your elbow, you want to see how far you can go. You're not cranking on your head or neck, and then rotate back down and tap elbow to forearm. So rotating up and then rotating down. And I am using my bottom arm, if you like, my bottom hand on the mat, as I rotate up. I'm pushing out to the side slightly to twist me around that little bit further. But my hips are staying still, my bottom's on my heels, and I'm trying desperately to rotate from my rib cage and my chest rather than cranking on my neck or pulling the elbow back on its own. Yeah, everything goes together. Go one more time, open, and then close. And then you're going to take the hand, and we're going to turn the shoulder the other way this time. So the back of the hand is going to come across your waistband, and it will, you know, depending on how flexible you are, it will depend how far it goes. But the cheat with this one is, as you open out now, you'll see, and you probably see, most of us will see, that you can't get as far. And the cheat will be that your wrist just wants to bend. So if I bend my wrist, so it looks like that, I can look like I can get a lot further. But if I keep my forearms straight on my back, I can't twist quite as far. So give that a go. And it's obviously this time your front of your shoulder is coming down towards the mat and across slightly, and then back of the shoulder is lifting up and away. And I'm trying to get my chest again to rotate around to the ceiling. So release it down and open it out. So all we're doing here is thoracic rotation. So your upper back, trying to get your upper back to move. Now, if I hadn't have sat you down on your heels, your pelvis would have been able to move and you would have been able to roll the whole lot. But by sitting you on your heels, you're kind of isolating the movement at the upper back. And it's a place where we lose a lot of our mobility. It's the place where we get the hump. You've seen a dowager's hump. These rotations are designed to get rid of that and to get your upper back moving. And then bring the hand back down again. So we're back to square one. And this time we're going to keep the arm straight. So the arm goes out and you want it up to the ceiling. Any rotation past that comes from the chest rather than cranking the arm back. So make sure, look up at it and make sure it's pointing to the ceiling. And then you close back down. Same again, up and open, and then closing back down, up and open. We're just changing the different arm positions, change which part of the spine is moving, and make a difference in terms of what part of the shoulder and shoulder blade and how that kind of moves in relation to your upper back. So open, and then we're going to switch sides. So same thing, we started off with the hand behind the head on the opposite side. The elbow comes across to the forearm, just taps, pelvis stays still, butt on heels, and then opening out to the sky. Comes across, taps, and opens out to the sky. And just keep moving. It's interesting to note, well, I'll say it's interesting to note, it can be quite depressing to note how much of a difference you've got from side to side, particularly if you're a golfer, for obvious reasons. You can have more rotation on the side that you take your backswing. Just out of interest. And then hand goes behind the back. Same thing, don't let your wrist bend, keep it straight. Drop the front of the shoulder towards mat and then opening out to the side and release. It's a much smaller movement. I appreciate it kind of feels, or maybe I'm putting words in your mouth. It feels icky to me. It doesn't feel like, you know, I can't get very far, especially on this side. I get very depressed on my left side. It doesn't want to do as I want it to do. Some of you be like that. No, I quite like this. I quite like it. I've got loads of movement. And if that's you, that's brilliant. If you're like me going, can't get this, that's okay too. Essentially, all the ones that you hate or don't feel right, they're the ones you need to do more often. And then bring the hand back in front. Again, same thing, but this time the arm stays straight. Take it up. Make sure it's pointing to the ceiling, not over here somewhere. Yeah, ceiling and close. And again, up and release. Nice and steady away. A couple more. And last one. And then back to center. And then from there, we're coming into, essentially, it's just a cat-cow. And the reason why is just want to make sure we're all on the same page with what is flexion of the spine and what is extension, right? So I can never remember which is a cat and which is a cow, because cats do both, right? So whichever it is, doesn't matter, but you're going to round your spine to the ceiling, which is what my cat does when it's very unhappy. And then you're going to sink your spine and lift your chest and your tail, which is what my cat does when it's pleased to see me. So, you know, you take your pick, round up and release down. So when your back is arched like this, I would call this, well, this would be an arch as well, wouldn't it? When your back is in this position, chest up, tail up, that's extension. When your back is rounded up towards the ceiling, that's flexion. So I'm pushing the floor away, pulling my shoulder blades apart, and then dipping down, lifting the chest, lifting the chin, lifting the tail, extension. Now I want you to come to the midpoint there, and then I want you to take that movement just into your pelvis. So flexion of the lower back, tilting the tail under, extension of the lower back, letting it lift. Just the pelvis. So no movement in the upper back this time. So essentially what we're doing is disassociating your pelvis movement from your rib cage movement. They should be able to move separately. So this might be slightly tricky, but your pelvis position in a lot of the stretches and any kind of mobility exercises is really important. It kind of what makes or breaks the movement itself. So you kind of really need to be able to control what your bottom's up to. Always a good thing, having control over your bottom, but you get the idea. Tuck and release, tuck and release. And if you're kind of feeling like the rest of your spine's getting involved, that's okay. Eventually you'll get to the point where you can refine it down and it's just your tailbone or your pelvis that's going. So come to the center of that. Talking about disassociating movement patterns, I'm going to try and disassociate your shoulder blades from your shoulder joint. I'm like, what? So pelvis stays still and neutral. This time, your shoulder blades come together Squeeze them together like you're cracking a walnut. And then you push the floor away and take them wide. Shoulder blades come together, push the floor away, take them wide. Now, for some of you, some of you have been following me for a very long time, will know this is a rhomboid push-up. Don't worry about the name. The elbows stay straight because the movement is coming from your shoulder blades. So my shoulder blades sliding together, my shoulder blades coming apart. And I'm trying to keep my shoulders away from my ears. Usually if I teach this in a group, I find that first time, 80–90% of people are kind of, their head explodes and they can't get the shoulder blades to move on their own. Their elbows get involved, the butt's going, everything's going. And if you feel that, that's okay. It takes a little bit of time to get the shoulder blades to do what you want them to do. You've just got to keep sending the signal and eventually they get there. Right, so if this is the bottom of the rhomboid push-up where your shoulder blades are squeezing together, this is the top where you're pushing the floor away. So the top of the rhomboid push-up is my shoulder blades as wide as they can be without me going into that arching shape. So I've just shoulder blades wide. Tuck the toes under, because we're going to add in a sort of core challenge to this. So we're going to add some weight to it. So what I want you to do is hover the knees. Those of you who do my strength sessions know what this looks like. You want your knees to hover just off the mat. In fact, I can still feel the mat under my knees. So it might not look like I've lifted very far. And if you're guessing which part's involved here, you should better feel your core working. And then lower the knees back down. Okay, so we're going to add in that action to the rhomboid push-up. Come off your wrists if you need to rest them at any point. It does get better with time. So you're going to sink to the bottom of your rhomboid push-up, shoulder blades come together. You're going to push to the top of your rhomboid push-up, shoulder blades come apart, and you're going to hover the knees, keeping the shoulder blades wide. You're going to lower the knees, shoulder blades come together. Shoulder blades go wide, hover the knees. Lower the knees, shoulder blades come together. Widen the shoulder blades, hover the knees. So, and then see if you can get it to kind of flow a little bit. So as you are pushing the floor away, at the very top, the knees hover. As the knees touch down, you start into the sinking. As the shoulder blades come apart, you lift the knees. As the knees lower, you sink into your bottom position. Top position, the knees hover. Bottom position, the shoulder blades come together. Keep working through that. So we're just combining the core now into the movement at your shoulder blades. And then for an added challenge, you can keep going with that, or come into your knee hover and keep the knees off the floor and try your rhomboid push-up there. Shoulder blades coming together, shoulder blades coming apart. The postman's at the door. You'll have to wait. And then lower the knees. And if you manage to get a rhomboid push-up there with your knees off the floor, well done, because it's incredibly hard. I like it. I like it a lot. It hurts. We're all right with our wrists. If you need to come off your wrists for a moment, just give them a roll. You can bring your, clasp your hands together and circle the wrists. Is a nice way to kind of, I've got somebody struggling there to get in. Somebody struggling with the tech. Given that you're all happily rolling your wrist there, I'm guessing that you were struggling a little bit. There she goes. So rolling the wrists. Again, just so that those of you that haven't worked with me before know what this is, right? So this is your explanation. It's called a static contraction, a static contraction. So if you bring your palms together, and I said, push your right hand away with your left hand, your arms would move, yeah? I want you to push your right hand away with your left hand, but don't let it win by pushing back with your right hand. Does that make sense? So I'm kind of pushing the two together, stopping the movement. So both are working, I'm contracting, but nothing's moving. This will make more sense when we get into the exercise because you're going to use the floor to press against. So we're coming into, it's a chest opener. It's to allow the arm to go back behind the body. It's massively important for when you're running. So we're going to stretch into the pec and the chest muscles. So you're going to be lying down on your front. So I'm going to keep my head up just so I can keep talking. You're welcome to rest your forehead on your hand, but your right arm is going to come out at 45 degrees. Now, you've got straight out, if I'm using my right arm, straight overhead would be 12 o'clock. Straight out to the side would be 3 o'clock. You want halfway, 7.5 minutes past. Yeah, so 45 degrees out to the side. So what's going to happen here, the right arm is reaching. I want you to reach it out and plant it down. Now, if you've got a sticky floor like I have, I've got kind of something to pull back against. If you slide in, that's okay. You'll still get the stretch. And then I'm going to turn my body. So I'm turning my pelvis away from my arm so that I can start to twist the pelvis. So I'm using my left hand to turn my hips over. Now, those of you that have worked with me in the morning expect me to lift my knee to the ceiling. We're not going to do that. You're going to take your, if it's your right arm that's out, it'll be your left leg is reaching behind and your right leg is reaching forward. So I've just scissored the legs. They've just split. You'll know if it's the right way around because you'll be able to feel the stretch more in your arm. So I'm reaching the top leg back and twisting my pelvis over. And you should feel quite a strong stretch into the chest at the front. Now you stay where you are. I'm just going to turn so I'm actually speaking to the camera. This time, you're going to stay there and you're going to do a static contraction by pressing the stretching arm into the floor. Yeah. So you stay where you are, press down with the stretching arm, like trying to push your arm through the floor as strongly as you can for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Release the contraction and then just see if you can rotate your pelvis a little bit more. So you bring the stretch back on. See if you can relax into it. She says, easier said than done. And then slowly release. So you're turning the pelvis back towards the floor and releasing the arm. And then we're going to go again on the other side. So same thing. So if it's your left arm this time, you know, you've got 12 o'clock will be straight ahead, 9 o'clock would be straight out to the side. You want that halfway mark. 7.5 minutes too. Same thing here. Use the opposite hand, so the right hand underneath the shoulder to help you shuffle your pelvis away from your arm to start with. And then take the top leg, once you start moving, so you start turning it over, the top leg reaches back and the front leg reaches forward. So I'm just scissoring the legs. So I get a little bit of rotation through the spine. This top hand is pushing against the floor to keep the stretch on. You can rest your head down. I quite like having my neck in line. I feel more stretched, but you know, find what works for you. You're always looking for, I don't know, the line of most tension. So you can kind of wriggle around a little bit until you find where you need to be to find that tension that you're trying to get rid of. And then we're going to do the static contraction again. So you're going to press down into the floor strongly for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then relax the contraction and just see if you can rotate any further. And breathe and relax into it as best you can. And then slowly release. That top leg comes back over, pelvis turns back down towards the floor, and you release your arm. And then we're going to do the back to the other side. And we're going to, you might feel the need to watch this a little bit, but you're going to be palm up this time. So the palm's going to be up. We're going to do a stretch there. And then we're going to make a fist. So your thumb will be you kind of on the outside and you're going to rotate into it. So you're going to rotate little finger down towards the floor. Like I say, it'll make sense when you get there. But same positioning, i.e. 45 degrees, so 7.5 minutes past, if it's your right arm. 45-degree angle, again, walking away. So you've got that almost like that sense of pulling away. And then you're going to turn it over. And you turn it over in the direction of, if I had a can of Coke in my hand, I'd be pouring the Coke out in front of me, not behind me. So that way. So your thumb will be on your foot side, if that makes sense, not your head side. Little finger head side, thumb foot side. And then the same thing from there, you shuffle the pelvis away, I'm going to start to rotate. So it's just a very different stretch. Again, you might need to search a little bit for it on this side. You might be able to twist a little bit further. You might not. Some of us have more range of movement in this position than others. I'm trying to get the back of my hand down towards the floor or down on the mat. My watch is in the way, but hey. And then from there, you're going to make a fist. And then you're going to flex the wrist. So I'm trying to pull my, what do you call it? My fingers back to my forearm. So it's a big stretch into the forearm here. Got my angle wrong. And then I'm trying to lift my thumb side up towards the ceiling. So I'm rotating my thumb up towards the ceiling and releasing. Thumb to ceiling and releasing. So twisting. You'll know you're going the right way because you can't go any further. If you go a little finger to the ceiling, you can turn your arm back over. So you're going in the same direction. It's like you're winding a big spring. I'm taking my back of my hand away from the floor and rotating round. And then again, slowly release out that. And I say slowly because you don't want to be twanging out of some of these movements. Some of them are quite strong. Same again on the other side. You want that 45-degree angle. The cat has stolen my blanket. I did bring a blanket in case I needed to prop things up on, but she's stolen it and I don't move her. So I turn the palm over again. So turning palm down, same as I did on this side. My thumb is down towards my feet. My little finger is up towards my head. I'm going to shift the pelvis over and twist. So you're back with the legs in the scissored position. You can use the top hand to push you a little bit further. Like I've got tons more stretch on this side for some reason, but I'm left-handed, that might be it. Then make a fist. And when I've got my fist, then I'm trying to pull, I'm trying to do that action. Yeah, trying to flex my wrist. Obviously it's the other way up, but flexing my wrist. So I'm trying to get my finger sides up towards the ceiling. And then I'm rotating my little finger down towards the floor. Big stretch for the forearm, the chest, the pec, the bicep, the whole lot, the whole shoulder complex. And you need that to move freely if you want your upper back to move freely, if you want your upper back to rotate, particularly when you're running. All of this needs to be free. And slowly wriggle yourself out of that position. So actually for an arm stretches, just coming up into a kneeling position, take it into a side bend. Let's take it back to the spine for a moment. So come to kneeling. You can have the toes tucked or flat, your choice. I'm going with flat at this moment in time. About hip distance apart with the knees. Nothing unusual about this, it is just a side bend, but you want to feel, most of us when we kneel up, just due to the general tension we've got in quads and stuff, will be arched through the lower back. So you're going to tuck the tail under. Now, that tuck will open you up at the front of the hip, it'll engage the glutes and it will make you lift your spine instead of being here. You can see this arch position, which is kind of where I want to be when I'm kneeling. So if I tuck, opens the front, lengthens the back and keeps my spine nice and straight. So keep the tuck under. And to start with, all I want you to do is bring your left hand to your left hip and your right hand is going to reach towards the floor and you're going to side bend over. If you find that this shoulder goes with you, reach the hand away. But you might find that that might give you a bit more stretch on the neck and it's your choice. If you like that, that's fine. If this is too much, when you let your head come over as well, feel free to bend the elbow. You want to be pulling that shoulder away from your ear. Don't let it creep up. So if we're reaching down with the right hand, because we're in a right side bend, left hand is going to come across the body so that you can take it up and over the head. So it's not a circle, it's stopping overhead. But if I'd taken it out to the side and over, it just adds more load. So we come this way, head relaxing over. You can bring your hand to your hip if you wish. I quite like to reach towards the floor. So a simple side bend to start with. And then this time do bring your hand to your hip because I want you to feel what's happening. So my thighs here are vertical, and then I'm going to kick the hip out to the side. Thighs to vertical, kick the hip out to the side. So the difference is just whether you've got the hips involved in your side bend or just the spine. Hips involved or just the spine. You just want to keep reaching and seeing if you can go that little bit further. So with this, we're trying to lengthen all the side line of the body. It's not necessarily a Jane Fonda moment, but you know, if you want to see it like that, feel free. I feel some disco music coming on. And release out of that, nice and steady as you come down through the arms. So same on the other side. We start with the hand on the hips, fine. Or you can start with it reaching, either way. But you're going to side bend over. So just a simple side bend to start with. Again, if it's too much on the neck, as you let the neck come over, if there's too much stretch down here, put your other hand on your hip. Otherwise, reach that top hand away as well, and you'll feel the stretch into the neck. Nice or not. And then we work in. So again, same thing. The right hand comes across the body this time, up overhead. You find that reach. And then we're going to straighten the thighs and then kick the hip out. So I'm keeping my spine the same shape. I'm just adding the hips in and taking them away. Adding the hips in, taking them away. It's really weird trying to watch you guys while I've got my head on one side, upside down. Last couple. And last one, and release. And then you're going to bring your butt back to your heels. So with this, you might need a cushion or not. I'll show you what I mean. In fact, I'll grab a cushion. So I'm sat on my calf muscles, my butt's on my heels. I'm just going to roll off to one side. So I call this a side saddle position. I don't know what you call it, position you'd sit in as a kid. Can you stay upright? And if the answer to that is no, I can't, then stick something under the butt cheek that's heaviest on the floor and it will help you stay upright. So your choice, you don't need to. You can use the other hand to hold you up. We're just going back to our side bend here. So same thing. If your knees are to the left, it's your left arm that goes up. Yeah, if your knees are to the right, it's your right arm that goes up. Side bend over. Once you're there, the opposite hand, the only hand that's free, comes across to the opposite knee. I'm using my hand on that knee to pull me round. So I'm trying to rotate my chest at least forward. There'll be a tendency, because you're in this position, there'll be a tendency to collapse. So you want to stay upright and you want your chest to be forward, if that makes sense, pointing towards you in this case. So again, plenty of side bends today. Just another move, got loads of rotation, loads of side bends, just because we don't do them very often and not well when we do. So hold and breathe. My arms shake too much this morning. And then slowly release out of that. And then you're going to create a shin box on that same side. So my knees are over to the left. So my left leg is going to be the horizontal of my shin box. My right leg is going to be the vertical. So it creates a shin box. I can't describe it any other way. And my sole of my foot is cupping my opposite knee. Shin box. We're all good with that. So from here, we're going to thread the needle. So you've got your shin box. If your legs are pointing to the left, you're going to bring your left arm down. So my elbow is on the floor under my shoulder and my fingertips are pointing away. And the same as we did before, we're going to reach the arm up to the sky and then open at the chest. So I'm trying to get my chest to open up, not necessarily flinging the arm back. make it from the chest. And then when you thread the needle through this gap, you're going to go palm down, right? So not palm up, palm down, thread the needle through, plant it, walk it away. If you can walk your fingers away like so, like a spider, walk the fingers away. And then you're going to lean away from your reaching fingers. So a big rotation. I'm trying to get my back of my shoulder down towards the floor. And then release. So same again, we go up to the sky and then open the chest around. Try to get chest to ceiling. And then as you thread the needle, it's palm down as far as you can go. Walk the hand away and then lean away from your reaching fingers. If you want to add in the breath, you inhale as you come through and exhale to open out to the ceiling. Your rotation. Inhale as you start to close. You might need more than one breath, but find an exhale to lean away from your fingers. One more time, opening out to the ceiling. And one more time, reaching through. Palm down, lean away, and release. Itchy, itchy. And then come to seated. So I'm still in my shin box, but my excuse me, your nose. It's always the same until you start doing something and your nose starts itching when you don't have any hands to do it with. So we're back in our shin box. We're just sitting upright instead. And from here, you're gonna, this back leg, you're gonna lift up towards the ceiling. Now, if I'm facing towards the camera or straight on over my front shin, I don't have very much lift. And that's where I kind of want you to start with. You might feel like you can get so far and then it's kind of like stuck, and that's okay. So we're turning it up and closing it. My foot's on the floor. I'm just opening and closing the leg, and you'll have whatever range of movement you've got in your own hip joint. That's absolutely fine. And then if you allow your chest to turn towards that leg, you might find that you can lift it a little bit more. So I'm just allowing my body to go with it. You might find that you kind of sink a little bit. It is what it is. See if you can stay upright. So I'm rotating, but I'm not kind of sinking. We're turning in and out. And you come back down. And then from there, you will have to lean a little bit away from that leg to get it to lift up. If you need to kickstand the hand to be able to lift the leg, that's okay. But however much you can stay upright and without your hands, lift your back leg. Yeah, not a particularly pleasant experience for most of us. It gets even worse because what I'm going to get you to do is keeping everything off the floor, you're going to turn it out, turning the knee up to the ceiling, and then you're going to try and turn the knee down. I'm trying desperately to get my ankle bone higher than my knee, and then I'm turning it out. So turning it down and turning it up, or as this case, out and in. So the thigh bone is turning in the hip joint and it's turning out in the hip joint. Knees pointing down, knees pointing up. Oh. Let's make that the last one, whichever direction, and then bring it down. So this is a shin box, so-called because your shins are making a square shape, I assume. I want you to try and find 90-90. So 90 degrees at the hip. So if my thigh bone is coming straight out of the hip, 90 degrees at the knee, 90 degrees at the ankle. The same on the back leg. Kind of looks like I'm running. 90 degrees everywhere. And you find that when you come to this position, it's harder to stay upright for most of us, for all of us. It's slightly harder just because of the difference in the legs. So there'll be a tendency as well for the pelvis to lift up on that back leg because nobody's back leg wants to go into that internal rotation. So try and sit your butt cheek down to the floor as best you can. And if it's completely beyond you and you kind of here going, I can't stay upright, which you'll see on the other side, because that's me on the other side. Yeah, if that's too beyond you, feel free to kickstand the hand, your choice. But this is your 90 degree. I want you to sink your hip back down to the floor. So wherever you are, if you need to close the gap a little bit, if you need to make those angles a little bit narrow to keep you upright, that's okay too. But wherever you are, look at your knee, chest over knee. Bring one hand down on one side, the other hand down on the other side. Keeping your chest lifted, you're going to come forward over your knee. What I'm not doing is collapsing over into a yoga special, right? So chest is staying lifted. I'm pulling myself towards you guys, basically. Not down towards the floor, forward. So I'm keeping my chest lifted, which keeps my spine straight. Not that flexing the spine in this position is bad. We might go there at some point. But I'm making this more about the hip and less about the spine. As soon as we go here, we lose all the hip work and all the glute stretch, and it just becomes the spine. So wherever you get to, keeping the chest lifted, my gaze is forward when I'm not reading my notes, which are right here in front of me. And then release out of that, you push yourself up with your hands. And I'm going to repeat all of that on the other side. So starting off with our side saddles. So you're coming back up onto your knees. I went left, so this time I'm going to go right. So I'm here in my little side saddle. And, you know, like I said, you'll have one side usually, typically, that's better than the other. So one side that's slightly less awesome, and this is my side. So I struggle to stay upright on this side. So I'm going to hold on to my shin so I can keep upright to start with. If your knees are pointing right, it's your right hand that goes up. And you reach up and over. So we're back to our side bend. And they're going to bring the free hand across to the opposite knee and use that to, I'm pressing down into the knee to bring my chest more square. So I'm rotating round. And we hold and breathe. It's a horrible position raise for me on this side. Neck if you wish, ear to shoulder. And then slowly release, and then bring it to the shin box. So you're just opening those angles a little bit. This time my right shin is creating the horizontal, left shin creating the vertical. And wriggle down my mat a little bit so that you can then come down onto your elbow, elbow underneath, shoulder, fingers pointing away. No hanging about on this one this time. I'm going to open the chest to the sky. Remember, it's not about reaching back here with the arm. It's about turning from the chest. The arm is give you something to follow, but it's not the be all and end all. Yeah, we want the rotation to come from the chest. Same thing, going to thread the needle, palm down, thread it all the way through, creep your fingers away, and then lean back the way you came, away from your reaching fingers. Trying to put the back of the shoulder down, side of the head. Got what you've got. Open up to the sky, find an exhale to open. And then as you thread the needle, find an exhale to lean away from your fingers. And release, open up to the sky. And the last one. Thread the needle, palm down, lean away from your fingers. And release. And then from there, sitting upright again, or as upright as we can, keeping your chest square to start with, or straight forward, so in line with the front shin. You open and close there. And again, you know, depending on which way you went first. For me, I always choose my good side first. Nasty habit, need to get out of that. You're lifting and lowering your back leg, or, you know, watching it kind of not do very much in my case. Really? That it? Oh, doesn't like it on this side. That's a note to self, practice what you preach. If you find one side's not quite as awesome as the other side, you need to do a few more on that other side. Okay, and then, like I say, you know, I'm going to need to lean quite a lot more on this side to get the leg off the floor. I might just be able to sit up or get my hands up. And they're going to turn the knee up to the sky and then down to the floor. Going to kick scan up to the sky, down to the floor. And it's the up to the sky one is usually everybody's favorite. Most of us have got that kind of range of movement. It's the turning it down and trying to get your heel higher than your knee. Most of us have kind of, we don't have that same range of movement for internal rotation, which is what that one is. We need it. We desperately need it. The thing with all of this stuff is, it's not like I'm saying you need this for running or walking or etc. But if you can't go there, you can't control it. So if you've got a tendency for your knees to drop in when you run or when you walk or when you squat or when you lunge, not great. So you need that range of motion in order to be able to control it. Oh God. And I'm going to make that the last one because I'm fed up. And rest it down. Everybody else, I'm fed up too. And then try and find your 90-90 on this side. And don't worry if you kind of like, I haven't a clue, is that 90? I don't know. You'll typically find yourself in a position that your body likes. If you found yourself in a position your body doesn't like, that's probably a good place to start. Same thing, your back leg, your pelvis will want to come with you. It will want to rotate forward. See if you can sit your back hip down. So you try to get your butt cheek on the floor. And that's all we're doing to start with, is just sitting into that back hip, staying as upright as we can. If you need to kickstand, like I said, that's okay. Kickstand with the hand, no problem. If you can stay upright. If you are really struggling and it's kind of horrible and collapsed, then by all means kickstand so that you can keep your spine straight. But it's not the end of the world. But all I'm doing is trying to encourage my butt cheek down to the mat. It's not feeling much encouragement, I can honestly say. And then we come into our 90-90 push-ups. So I'm going to try and get my chest in line with my thigh bone, front thigh bone. I bring one hand down here to the side of it, the other hand down to the opposite side of it. I'm kind of going on that same angle, chest forward. So chest forward over my thigh bone. I'm going to hold it here. I'm going to bring my hands a little bit further out. Weirdly, I've got more range on this side, but I'm still trying to keep my chest up. So if you can imagine, this is that flexion idea we were going back to. You can feel it. If you flex the spine, you'll feel the sort of stretchy feeling go out of the hip joint. Whereas if you lift your chest up and keep pulling your chest forward instead of down, forward, you'll feel it more in the hip. And I see some of you moving, this is quite a nice, I call these 90-90 push-ups, where you just bend and straighten the elbows, so you're kind of pulsing in and out. And again, it's your choice. There's benefit to pretty much everything, really, as long as you know what you're doing and why. But for our purposes here, we're trying to get more into the hips, which is why I'm not saying, just drape over. So you can pulse in and out of it if you wish, or you could just pull your body forward so you feel that stretch into the bottom hip. There is a contraction here you can do as well. If this is kind of makes sense in your head and you've been working with it for a while and you know what a contraction is, great. If you're kind of going, I'm not sure if I've got that right, don't worry about it too much. But the contraction here would be me trying to push my front knee down into the floor. So I'm in the stretch and I'm going to push my right knee like I'm trying to push it through the floor. You should feel your glute engage at the back as you do that. And you're pushing, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You relax the contraction and just see if you've got any more. Yeah, and for some of us, those contractions will, they make it more active for a start, which I quite like, but they also allow you to just get that little bit further usually. And then breathe a sigh of relief and unravel your legs. Okay, so I figure this next one is going to be the one, if you're going to shout at me, this will be it. So it is what it is. You will need a cushion of some description, cushion, block, towel, whatever, just something to prop up your butt cheek. Doesn't need to be particularly big. You can do it without, if it's not the end of the world, but your pelvis just won't be quite square. You won't feel as much of a stretch. So you're going to come, so you're sitting on your butt. You're going to bend the right leg. Now my heel, you can see my thighs are separate. My calf is away from my hamstring. In other words, I've got spaces. And I'm going to get hold of my calf and I'm going to move it out of the way. So I've pulled the bulk of my calf. Some of you got little skinny legs. I haven't. I've got massive amounts of calf in here. So I'm just pulling my calf out of the way so that I can bring then my leg back and I'm sitting into it. So my ankle and my heel are on the outside of my leg. I'm not sat on my leg, so I'm falling to my left. Yeah. So if it's your right leg that's bent, you'll be falling over to your left, and that's the side that the cushion goes under. So the cushion's going to go under the left side so that your pelvis is balanced. If you can't really see where this is going, you will in a moment. You're going to kickstand the hands behind you. And you can bring a stretch on by tensing your right glute and tucking under. So you're back to that tucking under sensation. So as I tuck under, you should feel a stretch on the front of the quad. So essentially, I'm taking you into a position. Everybody's done the holding onto your ankle and pulling your heel to your bum stretch. This is a floor version where you're using the strength of your quad to create the stretch. Yeah, so it's a bit more, I don't know. For me, it's more running related than just sort of doing a standing stretch where your pelvis is all over the place. So I am contracting my glutes. I'm squeezing my butt cheek to bring on the stretch in the front of the thigh. And don't worry, we're not going to be here long. I'm not going to take you into, there are some contractions here. There's one where we cross the leg and all the rest of it. We might get to that. It's like contorting yourself into a little ball. But for our purposes, I just want to lengthen this because we're going into some lunges. So slowly come out of it. And by come out of it, I mean roll away from the stretching leg so that you can free it off. Switch sides, bend the leg under. In fact, I'll come over this way so you can see what I'm doing. So I'm bending the leg to the side of me. I'm getting hold of my calf muscle and getting it out of the way, pulling it back in, tucking my doofus under the other butt cheek so my pelvis is level. My foot's definitely out to the side. It's all touching, everything's touching, but my foot's on the outside of my butt. I'm not sat on it. Kickstand the hands behind. Now, you kind of want, if you look at your thigh, it will tend to be, if it's your left thigh, it will be pointing over to the right, if that makes sense. You're slightly off angle. See if you can roll your hips and your legs so that your thigh bone is pointing up towards the ceiling. That's a step too far in your brain, don't worry about it. But you'll feel, when you tuck the tail and squeeze the glute, you'll feel more of a stretch. If I'm kind of over here and I stretch, it shifts it, you might still feel a stretch. But whereas if my thigh bone is pointing straight to the ceiling and I tuck under, I get a nice big stretch. And all I'm doing, I'm holding this time. Like I say, we'll get to the contractions another day. They're just a bit more complicated. I'm conscious of the time. So we're just lengthening out the quad so that hopefully these next lunge series won't be quite as brutal. And then release. And to come out of it again, roll away from your stretching leg to free it off. And you can get rid of all your bolstering or whatever you've used. So coming into lunges, if you want cushions under knees, that kind of stuff, that's absolutely fine. Especially if you're on a hard floor, might be a good idea. But otherwise, we're coming to a 90-90 lunge position. In fact, I'll do the other leg first. So this was the 90-90 position that if you'd have been sat on the floor, this is what it should have looked like. So you'll know for next time. Make sure that you're about hip distance apart with the legs, so you're not kind of wibbly wobbling. If you're on a tightrope with your foot and your knee, you will wibble wobble all over the place. So you're going to bring, let's go hands down. Let's go either side. So one hand either side of the front foot. And you're going to come forward. So all I'm doing is shifting my weight forward. So I'm kind of getting, my chest is on my thigh, and I'm using my body weight here to stretch out my Achilles on this side. So I'm basically resting my body weight on that side and stretching out the opposite side. And then from there, I'm going to come backwards and I'm going to sit my butt back down onto my heel and lift this front foot, which then if you hinge forward, will give you a stretch down the hamstring, right? If getting to this position is a no-go, in other words, you can't get your butt to your heels, you could tuck the toes and sit back there, or you can just go as far as you can and hold. And then you come forward and bring your body weight over. And we're going to add to this. So while you're here, you're going to bend your back leg. And you try and use your hamstring to bring your heel as close to your butt as you can. Then when we go back, keep your heel to your butt, 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 as long as you can. And then sink as far as you can into your hamstring stretch. Toes pulling back towards you, chest pulling forwards. As you come back, lift the foot at the back as soon as you can. Keep it lifted, keep pulling it towards your butt. This is going to get hamstring, hamstring cramp. This is usually where it happens. So keep it lifted as you go back, keep it lifted, 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 and then sink down into your hamstring stretch. Come forward, come all the way up into that 90-90 position. I'm going to add in the arms this time. So the arms are going to come up to the ceiling, tail is going to tuck. So I'm tucking under. I'm going to come forward, still staying as upright as I can. So now I've not got my body weight on my thigh, but I'm still trying to get as far forward so I can feel the work in the Achilles. If you've not particularly tight through the Achilles, you might not get that, but you will get the mobility in the ankle. And then I want to come back. Now, the trick is, can you keep the arms lifted as you sit back into your hamstring stretch? So then your hinge is with the arms up, so it's a bigger load. So be nice to yourself. If you need to bring your arms down, cross them across your chest, put them on your hips, that's all fine too. If you're here and you are going to bring your arms down in this position, when you come back up to the arms up. So if you need to bring the arms down at any point, that's okay. And then this is the miserable bit, more miserable than everything else. Bring your heel to your butt here without falling face down, whoever that was. Somebody went nearly face down on the mat. So hinge forward as far as you can, still pulling your heel to your butt. Nicely done. Keep the heel up, keep the heel up, keep the heel up as you push back, 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 sink down. Hinge forward for your hamstring stretch. Don't worry, we've only got one more to do. Coming up, come forward, lift the back foot. And then slowly release out of that. And we switch sides. So you can see the progression, arms down, et cetera, et cetera. So your choice. You can't add the arms in, don't worry about it too much at this moment in time. So 90-90, tuck the tail under first, so you feel that little bit of a stretch in the front of the back leg. And then you're going to bring the hands down either side of the foot. And then lean forward. Lost my spot. So you're taking my body weight forward, resting my chest, my whole body weight over this ankle. For me, Achilles are my nemesis when I'm running. I spend a lot of time lengthening the tissues down the back of the leg. It's essentially the bottom of the squat position. And then start to push back. If you can, sit your bottom to your heel, pull the toes at the front towards you, and then hinge forward. Get the horrible stretch all down the back. Same thing, start to pull yourself forward. Lean your body weight onto that front leg to really mobilize into the ankle. Try and keep your heel down. And push back. And then this time, coming on up, we're adding the hamstring curl and the arms up. So come forward and lift the back foot up, heel to butt. If you can, keep the arms up. If you need to bring them down, that's okay, but keep the back leg up as long as you can. Then sink down, hinge forward with the arms up, or the hands on the hips, or the hands across the chest, whichever works. The arms are up. Make sure you're nice and vertical again as you come back through. Lift the back leg up and come forward. Keep the back leg lifted as long as you can and sit back, hinge forward, and slowly release before you come back to your 90-90 lunge position and release the arms. We're just about there. So lie yourselves back down on your mat. Flat out, straight legs, arms by your sides. Bring your attention to your breath. So we've covered pretty much everything there, most body parts, either with stability, mobility, or flexibility. When you lie down after something like that, A, you might be knackered, but B, you might get a sense of being more in contact with the ground, almost like there's more parts of your body in contact with the ground. That's how you know certain things have released. It's why it's uncomfortable to lie on the ground for most of us to start with, or at any time, why we can't go camping, etc., lie on the floor. Because your body has all those tight spots and grumpy spots that don't want to yield to a hard floor. So I'm hoping you get a sense of being a little bit freer, a little bit more contact with the floor, and potentially a little bit deeper in breath. Let's take a few deep breaths, see how you feel. On each exhale, just see if you can allow your body to sink deeper into the mat. In other words, be as heavy as you possibly can be. And then it's entirely up to you. You can stay there if you want to stay there because it feels nice. Or you can stay there if you can't actually move anymore. Or you can stand up and speak to me. I'm going to stop the recording. Let me stop that so when you do speak to me,